So one of the things I've been talking about recently and posting about recently is um, how to tell if someone loves you. What does love feel like? Why so many victims of abuse get caught up in a cycle with a person that we believe loves us and yet is treating us terribly. And from the outside, everyone's like, what are you doing? And on the inside, you're like, no, but you don't understand. We love each other. This person loves me more than any person who's ever loved me that I've ever experienced. And that is why I'm holding on to this nonsense. So I've been kind of percolating over the idea that you can't necessarily, I even hate to say this, you can't necessarily feel love. So I do, in myself, feel love when I love a person. You know, like when it's when a person, you know, like when I loved my, I still kind of do. Oh, he's dumb, but you know, like in a not romantic way. But my son's father, you know, I loved him for a very long time, romantically, and I had a feeling in my heart that I associated with that. My son, you know, I love him as much as I can conceptualize of loving a person, and there's this feeling in my heart. But it's incomplete. It's incomplete. So true love is I've seen it explained like the wind. You can't see the wind, but you can see its effects. You can feel it. You can, you know, observe how it acts in your world. And it's the same way with love. So if you have a person who shows up, pays attention, and serves, is not selfish. Oh gosh, what is it? It's there's that Bible verse. It's like love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it doesn't boast, blah 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 blah, like that whole shebang. You know, a person who loves you truly is a person who is doing all those things. So even if you can't tell how they're feeling, you can see how they're acting and connect with that. So the hiccup is if you are a person who has had unsafe parents, abusive parents, parents with mental health challenges, let's say, and you've had an inconsistent love environment, you've not been securely attached to them, whatever, and then you go out into the world as an adult and you meet a person, and this has been me, and suddenly you feel like this intense longing for them. It like strikes you. I mean, it honestly, it was like my heart was aching. It was bizarre. I was like, I must be meant to be with this person. Otherwise, why would I feel so strongly about them? And the person I felt the most that way about is the person who hurt me the most, who was the least healthy, who hit me enough to give me bruises. Like, why was I feeling that way? So anyway, there's that concept of repetition compulsion, which is that, you know, we keep trying over and over again to fix a thing. So we'll engage in patterns that repeat throughout our life because we're trying to change the end of the story. We're trying to resolve it. So often we're taking like that childhood pattern and then we bring it into our adulthood with like a romantic partner. We're going, I feel this feeling. Why isn't this working? I care so much. I love so hard. You know, this is so intense. A lot of the literature talks about how that victims of abuse get addicted to the highs and lows. That is not what I found, because I was in a let's see, my marriage lasted 14, 15 years. The relationship in total lasted 15 years. Almost 10 years of that marriage was really like just, it was great. it was chill. Oh man, I love this person so much. That's why I had a child with him, because the thought that he was going to die on me and that there would be any piece of him in the world, I was like, I can't handle that. Let's, let's have a child. Do you want to do this? We had a really technically boring relationship, we worked and we'd go out sometimes. We hang out with friends and watch TV. I mean, it was very low key. It was not, if you compare it to my abusive ex, oh my gosh, the drama, the level of high school drama. I knew immediately. I was like, this is, I tried to break up with him a stupid number of times. And I was like, it kept dragging me back, this feeling. And he'd show up with like his tears in his eyes. And I was like, maybe we're meant to be together. And we just have to teach each other how to love each other. And I've seen this type of dialogue with other victims of abuse. Friends, no. Super trap, don't do it. Danger, Will Robinson. So it took me a long time to realize that it wasn't me. Whatever feelings he was feeling in my direction were not because of who I was intrinsically as a person, but because of how I made him feel. So when he would talk about how we should be together, it's typically language like, I've never loved anyone like you. Still talking about himself. No one's ever loved me the way you have. Still talking about himself. You taught me how to love. Still kind of not really about me exactly. Just like, okay, what do you like about? Do you think I'm, interesting? Do you think I'm smart? Do you like how I think? Do you think I'm pretty? Are you attracted to me? Like, do you like how I'm a mom? Like, there's so many nuances to a person and how they are in the world. And I got to this point where I was like, feels like anyone could show up and give him this feeling that he has. And that's who he would glom onto. I would say early on in our relationship, he probably did compliment me more. That's probably technically the love bombing phase. But there was a point that it ended. And I was sitting there like, I would tell him all the amazing things about him that I thought were so great. And it was just, it wasn't reciprocal. One reason I don't think it was reciprocal is once he got out of the love bombing phase, he got into the devaluation phase and like, then maybe I could do better phase. And maybe the grass is greener somewhere else phase. And obviously from the beginning, I was very much like, this doesn't seem healthy. His favorite song was Justin Timberlake's, it's called Mirror. And I was like, that's so codependent. But I went down that rabbit hole enough where I was like, no, yes, that's true oh man, it was like I was in a cult of two people where he was the center. The only time I ever really pushed back on him was when it was about my son. Like I was like, I'm not fucking playing with that. But everything else, I let him. It was a hot mess. So it was a combination of a couple of things. One, I mistook that activated arousal system that I had built for my father to let me know danger, but also this is a person you love and need to attach to. So that was activated with this person and I mistook it for love. Second, I was not paying attention to how selfish he was. Love is not selfish. Love is not controlling. And this person was like drastically controlling. And any boundaries I tried to set, he would interpret it as me trying to control him. For example, I said, no, I am not okay with us arguing in front of my son. And it turned into this whole thing about like how I was trying to control, how loud he was and his voice. And you know, like, it was not fit. He should be able to express himself. Like, I was also like, yo, our neighbors can hear. Like, what are you doing? Please be more quiet, you know, or my kid is sleeping, or we don't want the neighbors to call the police on us, you know, that kind of thing. So any boundary that I would try to assert, he would interpret as me trying to be controlling of him and preventing him from speaking. Obviously, I don't agree. So activated arousal system. I wasn't paying it, and that I misinterpreted as love. I wasn't paying attention to his selfishness, and I wasn't really tuned into, hey, what does healthy love look like? So I was just feeling this feeling, and I was like, oh, it's gotta mean something. It's gotta mean something. We have this connection. What's going on here? And what actually broke it for me. So protecting children is actually a super huge value for me. And the person that he left me for and then ended up cheating on me with was someone who at the time was 21, I want to say. And I'm really ashamed of myself that I wasn't paying attention well enough. So she ended up, he was with her. She was institutionalized at a psychiatric facility. What's the first thing he did? He came and tracked me down, right? So you're saying you love this person. She's been put in an institution. You don't know what's going on and you are worried about her. And you come find me? Like, what? And at the time I was like, you know, he'd been triangulating the two of us against each other. She was semi-stalking me. It was a hot mess. I was getting calls at my office. Like, why are you I'm at work. Why are you calling me? I had to block her number. You know, that she had gotten out of his phone, right? So that's right. So there was like a whole bunch of like drama and situation there. But I got to a point, you know, where instead of being so upset about this other person, I finally shifted to like, oh my gosh, she's so young. How selfish was he to do to her how he did? There was one of our last conversations. He was explaining to me how, you know, she doesn't respect boundaries and she'll still contact him and he has to like let her know like she's not being safe and she's not okay and like violating his boundaries. And I was like, why haven't you blocked her? You know she's bipolar. She is struggling with mental health. She was literally institutionalized as a result of the way that you treated her. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, no, he just really enjoys feeling like the healthy one. You know, like it's not him, it's her. And that was the point I was like, yo, help her. I had begged him for years, like, please block me, please. I'm trying, like, I'm not okay in this relationship. I need to be able to let go of you and I can't do it. And, you know, he'd get really like condescending with me. I'm like, you should just be able to like not. But there's no telling, like when he'd show up outside my apartment, you know, he'd wait 8 hours in his car for me. So anytime I drove home, in my brain, I was like, is he going to be there? Is he going to be there? Is he going to be there? I was thinking about him all the time, regardless of whether or not he was here. It was obsessive, and he did it. And I'm not saying he did it on purpose, but he had me doing this. So even when he wasn't in the picture, just the thought that he might show up or drop something off or be waiting there or whatever, you know, or knock on the door, and then if I tell him to leave, he'd be like, no, I'm not leaving, and like, you know, force his way in or sit outside till I let him in. Like one time I left my apartment for an hour or two and came back, he was still here. He's just like, what? The entitlement, like he has no idea. He thinks I'm abusive. It's just like, how do you not see this? Oh. So anyway, the way that he treated this very, very young person and the contempt he had for her. And it was like, you know she's struggling with her mental health. In fact, one of the times he left me for her, he said, well, she needs me more. She's more fragile. It's like, if you know she's fragile, why are you doing this? And that's where we get to control. So, an abusive relationship is one person misuses their power over another person to get what they want at the other person's expense. A lot of time with an abusive person, and they're not necessarily intentionally doing this, but they can't tolerate someone else having like a different, existing differently in the world, doing things a different way, having different opinions, whatever. And instead of going, nah, this ain't for me, son, they try to make the other person change, conform, do what they think is right. And the interesting thing is, back to that mirror thing, when you transform a person as someone who thinks what you want them to think, believes what you want them to believe, does what you want them to do, they're no longer their own individual self. How can you possibly love that person? You've turned them into a mirror for you, right? And a lot of abusers tend to lose interest in the other person at that point. It's like, well, of course. You don't necessarily like yourself. You try to force somebody into, replicating what you want, right? But then they're gone, and you don't love them. You didn't love them before. You don't love them now. It's about control, possessiveness. So when we're in these relationships with people and we're like feeling the feelings, and we're like, oh, that must be love. No. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious. It does not boast. Yada yada. The whole rest of that thing. So, how is that person showing up for you? How is that person celebrating who you are? He used to like nag me all the time. He told me, he was like, oh yeah, sometimes you're so arrogant. I mean, like, why are you with me if you don't like me? If you liked me, the other perspective on that is, wow, I really like that you're strong-minded. Actually, that's not even an analogous. Strong-minded is not the same as arrogant. But, he would tell me stuff like that. And it's like, why are you, why? What do you like about me as a person? And it always boiled down to him. How I treated him, how I made him feel. This intensity, I think he felt it too. And so he was feeling like this intensity, and like we connected, and a lot of people talk about trauma bond, like maybe that's a thing, but it's complex. And we don't recognize like, oh, it's our arousal system that's activated, not our heart. It's not the same. And we know it's not our heart because the fruits of love aren't there. Hope this makes sense. I'll talk to you next time.